Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are watching this video. In this video, we're going to talk about how to disassemble a macpherson strut, also just known as a front strut in your car, or some people even say how to disassemble a shock absorber. So that's what we're going to talk about, and actually that's what I'm going to show you how to do in this video. Now, full disclosure, if you have a locomotive, this video is not for you because locomotives are a little bit different. Now, you can see here I have an Allen key socket. I'm going to show you how to use that. I have a regular socket for the spring compressor, 21 mil socket there, and I even have an oxygen sensor socket. So I'm going to show you how to use that, and it's important to have a punch and a spring compressor tool. You're gonna need those. So let's get to it. But firstly, you do want to be very careful when you're doing this, because if you don't do it properly, you can actually hurt yourself, someone else. It's actually quite dangerous. You got to remember the spring holds up the front of the car, so it's under a whole lot of pressure. So you have to be very careful, and you want to use the proper tools. You can see in this video here, just to the side here, there's a person that has not put a spring compressor on, and you will see what is going to happen. So you definitely don't want this to happen to you. So pay attention and enjoy this little bit, and then we're going to discuss. So that's why we use proper tools, because we don't want that happening to us. So once you have your spring compressor screwed down so it clamps the spring, it makes it smaller. You can see here it's nice and loose. I'm wiggling it around so you can tell it is not under pressure. So now we can tackle taking it apart.
So we're looking at the top piece right now, and what we have to do is we have to undo this nut. Now normally what we can do is just put our gun on reverse, our impact gun. We can even probably just hold this with our hands or just stick a pry bar in here. I want to show everyone how to do it by hand. Put your ratchet on to take it off. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's just the way, because you're turning the nut part, the shaft. You're not actually turning the nut, you're turning the shaft. Now if you're turning the nut, obviously you would want it to come off counterclockwise. Now what you can always do, just to make sure you got it the right way, is you can always hold your nut just like this, okay? And you'd want the nut to go counterclockwise. So say if you had your ratchet on the off right there and you're turning, you'd see, look, it's not gonna work. So if you went the other way, you'd actually be tightening. So that's why I said you want your ratchet on the on. And then what we can do is we can just, there we go. We can just hold it just like so. Now the thing is, as this nut comes closer to the top, as you saw what happened, this socket isn't gonna bite enough. It's barely biting right now. So then what I do for the last part is that's when I just use my oxygen sensor thing here. I know it's the wrong size, it's 22 mil, but it's just to hold the nut. We just need to fit something in there to hold the nut. And then you see we can get in there, and I can even, just by my hand, I'm holding it. And then we can take the nut right off. There we go. There's our nut. And we can remove the top, I don't know what you want to call it. It's supposed to be a bearing piece, actually, the whole bearing, but I think it's all come apart here. So anyway, here's the top piece that goes on. So now if you were going to replace everything, what you'd do now is with these springs, you could just take everything off, and we could just lift the whole thing off, just like so, if we can. It's pretty rusted here. There we go. And there you go. Now what we can do is just transfer over all of our parts. All the parts that have to be transferred over can just be transferred over, and then this part can be recycled.
So there you have it. There's the piece on the floor. So we're going to reuse the spring. You can reuse the boot, pretty much everything. The only thing we're going to replace is the bearing on top, and then we're going to replace the actual strut. The car was a little bit on the bouncy side. It needed new struts, and the bearing, you can see here, it actually came apart, and it was binding. So when we would turn the steering wheel left and right, you could actually feel the binding in the steering wheel, and it just didn't feel natural. Anyone that's had that problem will know exactly what I'm talking about. But this way we're able to save some cash, because these things are actually quite expensive if you buy them complete. I don't know, maybe they call it fully a loaded strut or something. I don't know exactly how they label it for selling it. But anyway, you can save some money if you reuse some parts and then only replace what you have to replace. So here's the tools I use. I don't want to go in depth on the tools, because depending on what kind of strut you have for what kind of car you have, you may need something slightly different, but they're all pretty much the same. Some of them on the top, they have a Torx bit. This one, it was from a Volkswagen. I think it was from a Volkswagen Rabbit. So it had an Allen key. So anyway, that's it for the end of the video. Hopefully you really enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again next week. Thanks everyone. GarageKing over and out.